Hey everyone, Adam here, So Is Her Podcast. I have another interview for you today. I got to sit down with Jennifer Trudrung to talk about her newest movie, The Nest. It was cool talking to Jennifer, getting her origin story, how she got into movies. She's in a part of the country that I didn't think had a huge movie pedigree, so that was cool and also encouraging for people who like the entertainment industry but maybe don't live in LA or New York. Not only hearing her origin, but then talking about her kind of process and how she got into writing The Nest. I've said this a million times. Horror always works better to me when it comes from a real place and then the horror's built around it rather than jump scares, torture porn kind of stuff, and horror for the sake of horror. Jennifer knocks it out of the park with The Nest. It's really cool how personal this was to her, so much so that her kids even got involved. We go into all of that, so enjoy the interview. Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. I'm sitting down with Jennifer Trudrung. Hopefully I got that right.
You did.
Okay, great. You have a new movie out now, which is awesome, called The Nest. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I actually watched The Nest with a couple of friends last night on an outdoor screening theater, and it was really fun. They actually are two of my best friends, and they do grammatical editing on my screenplays. So they're
Okay.
not only great friends, they're very helpful and supportive. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting editing process for a script, I think, but I guess necessary.
Mhm.
Before we get to The Nest, the one kind of boilerplate thing I like to do is ask creative people to go back to the beginning of their creative journey and kind of talk about like what was your spark and how you got into it.
That's a great question. I would say all of this. My sister likes to call it my creative midlife crisis. When I was a park ranger before we moved to North Carolina, and I have a master's in English education, so I've always kind of been a writer, but it was more poetry. And then I was a park ranger, and then we moved here, and I had children. Um, and it kind of when I was reaching my late 30s, I was like, what am I going to do? The kids are, they don't need as much anymore. Um, and I tried out, they were filming the Hunger Games in the area, and I was and a group of moms and I were like, let's go be background extras in the Hunger Games. And actually got booked doing that. And I ended up working 16 days on that film. I show up for like seconds, but being on that set and as a lifelong reader and it blew my mind seeing how they took the world of that book and made it a reality and seeing how the actors did their thing and then I was just hooked. I was like, all right, I want to act. So it started with taking acting lessons, doing some more background work, finally getting an agent. And during that process, my acting coach recommended writing our own scenes or our own monologues. And that sparked me writing short films. And they're all horror short films. So for the past 4 or 5 years, I've done 6 or 7 short horror films and done like the film festival circuit. And then finally I was like, I want to write a feature. And this was a few years ago. And so I wrote The Bewailing, which is now The Nest. And I have a studio space where I was writing, and it's in a production company. And James Settle approached me one day and he's like, do you have any feature screenplays? And at that point, I had two, and I gave them to him. And he was like, The Bewailing, The Nest really resonates with me. And that that began the journey of revising. I learned a lot, changed the script a lot, strengthened it, cut it back, changed characters, and then production started pretty quickly. After about 6 months of editing the script, we locked it down, and then it was just I was the writer. I got to read with the people auditioning, which was really fun as an actor. And then I got to go on set and once again, now as the writer, see the world I created come to life. So that's kind of how it all began.
Wow, you've lived several lives. I
Yes.
mean, a master's in English is tough in itself, and then a park ranger, which is a really hard job to get. Like, there's a lot of education involved. And I don't imagine there's a ton of crossover with the two skills.
No, and honestly, I, yeah, there is a story. I think I write a lot about things that are loosely based on the experiences I've had. Like this story is loosely based on my daughter's what happened with my daughter when she had severe separation anxiety. And so there is a story there. I'm sure there's a horror story I can write about my time as a park ranger for sure.
Oh,
So
I'm sure there's several. Yeah, that's really cool that you've done so many varied things because now you have so much life experience to pour into the writing. Not to
yes,
mention
in other
raising
words, I'm
kids.
old. I'm gonna
No, that's not what I'm saying.
I'm teasing you.
So that is also cool that you mentioned that the nest. It's a horror movie, but you have this real world personal feeling and emotion into it. And I always feel that horror is at its best when it is talking about like a parallel to real life. It's not just like slasher this for the sake of it, but when it actually has something to say. So I think it's cool you managed to get that across in your movie.
Thank you. While I was writing it and watching the finished product, yes, it's definitely a familial horror thriller, psychological thriller, family drama. There's a lot in there, and then it kind of has the horror elements mixed in that are making these things happen. But to me, the heart of the script was always the mother and daughter relationship, and what the mother is willing to do for her child, and also just the pressure as a mom that moms experience, everywhere, from other mothers, from society, from relationships, and the pressure they put on themselves. So yeah, there's a lot. My friends were watching it last night, and then my husband watched it, of course, the other day. We had a big theater screening here in Asheville, and he was like, the scenes where the husband and wife are talking at the table, he was just like, mm-hmm, like, yeah, yeah, I've heard that. And then my good friend Kim last night at the screening, she was watching the couple interact, and she was like, ah, marriage, like it just that was nice as a writer, like to know that it did kind of capture the real world in terms of marriage and parenting. So
For sure. Yeah. Do you ever find there's a little bit of pressure because you're taking from your own life and you know that people, maybe your characters aren't like a direct one to one correlation, but they might recognize a scenario or a conversation or a bit of their personality in a character? Do you ever feel pressure of like, oh, I don't know how brutally honest I should be here?
yes, I because so my daughter Penny actually plays Billy the bully in The Nest, and so she saw the final product, and she knew about the script, and she knew it was loosely based on her experience when she was a lot younger with her severe separation anxiety. And Ricky is the name of her favorite stuffed animal, and she told me to change the name, and it never happened. And so she watched the screening, and she was so mad at me. And yeah, so my older daughter and Penny have both been like, "Can you stop kind of writing about us?" Even though they know it's loosely based. And so I'm trying to respect that. And but so much of being a parent is a fear you experience as a parent, and because it's this great love that you've never felt before. So but I'm phasing out, although I was telling my friends last night, now I'm writing a screenplay that there's a character that meshed the two of them together. So I'm still writing about people, but trying to be careful about my kids now, because they're 13 and 16, and they're like, okay, cool it.
Yeah, yeah, that especially that age, I imagine, is when they're like, you got to stop.
Yeah.
That's it seems like it's impossible to not take from your life to write. I mean, you have to. It's your voice, but it is an interesting kind of I don't know if it would be a paradox, but something along those lines.
Yes. And I actually, and my dad, we just moved him into a memory care facility. He has Alzheimer's, and And that has sparked a lot of interesting thoughts, because it's a horrible disease, and so many people are dealing with it now because, the boomers, they're aging out and they're aging up, and, so yeah, and so there's a script to be written about that, and it's just a matter of where to go, and it'll be very painful to write, which can make it good, or I could just be like, "This is gonna be therapy, and I'm gonna make it a horror comedy." Like, let's just so I don't know, but yeah, I get sparks here and there, as you say, through life experience, for sure.
Yeah. And I think it's a healthy way to process things too, is to, you have to deal with it head on in the real world, but then you can kind of take it, and you said horror comedy. So you can put like a different spin on it where it makes it a little easier to digest.
Right.
It's really interesting. When you're writing something like The Nest, because it is deep seated, serious emotions and stuff, but you also need the thrills and the excitement of a horror movie. Do you write like kind of totally one side first? Like, do you write the emotional drama and then add in horror? Or do you write a horror movie and then ground it? Or because you've been writing and, the master's in English and you know how to craft the story and pacing, did it all kind of meld at once?
Um, I would say that having the degree in English education did not teach me anything about screenwriting.
Oh,
That is an entirely different beast that I am still learning. I mean, I know about first act, second act, third act, and the hero's journey and everything. But for me, it's kind of the way I write is almost like I'm watching the movie in my head. So as I'm writing, I see everything and I'm writing down what I see, and then it kind of will move on to that next scene. So I normally just knock it out, a really rough, short version of a screenplay, a feature, and then go back and, in this case, working with a production company that had a certain budget and, certain locations we could use, we were having to cut out some characters and some locations. And so then you have to go back in and be like, okay, we just cut out this entire scene at a doctor's office. So now I need to meld this, make this scene make sense with that earlier scene when we're missing this scene. And yeah, so but for me it's very visual. I'm a very visual writer. And I have also, for the nest in particular, I have an extreme fear of ticks, and also, just beyond the fact that they carry all sorts of nasty diseases, it's just like that unknown. You can have one on you for a long time and not know. And so, like, I just the idea of something inside of you that you're not aware of that is causing you to act a certain way, that kind of was the horror element of that was always within this.
yeah, that's interesting on many levels. The first thing you mentioned, that your English writing education didn't help you with the screenplay at all. I find that really interesting, and of course, I believe you, but it's just like it's almost hard to wrap your head around.
Well, you know what? I With my master's, it was really for teaching middle school and high school English. Um, and for screenwriting, it's very procedural, and you can experiment and you can play with a screenplay, but especially as a new writer, and like I don't have a manager yet. I'm still learning how to write a good enough screenplay that you can submit with a query letter where that it is written as perfectly as it should be, and that's like with, you know interior, dark room basement, or well, like there's so much more, and I write a lot of description which doesn't need to be in there. So yeah, it's almost like you have to peel it back to its really basic layer, because ultimately the director, it's their vision of your script. Does that make I think that makes sense?
Yeah, no, it totally does. Yeah. Did how many or what kind of courses did you take on screenwriting, or did you just kind of dive in and then piece it together?
I've taken several classes, and that's something I want to do more of. There's some online classes I would like to do, and there's like, the mastercraft. What is that one?
Master class.
Yes, master class. There's
Yeah.
some screenwriting, and I belong to that. I need to give myself the time to do it.
Yeah.
So I've taken several screenwriting classes locally. Where I live, there's actually an amazing creative pool. I feel like a lot of people from LA move here and New York move here. So um, the screenwriter for shows like China Beach and what else has she done? She's it's so many amazing shows. Lagney, Cagney and Lacey.
Yep.
So
Okay.
like those really big procedural shows back in the early 70s. But anyway, so she was teaching classes through this group called the Flatiron Writers Group. So I took one with her and then one with another person. And so I think I know the rudiment. That's what I'm not
Rudimentary,
teaching
I
kids because I
think.
we know how to pronounce certain things, the basics. And so a lot of it is still me teaching myself how to write and then taking these classes too.
That's cool. Yeah, the formatting and stuff is a huge hurdle, and it almost seems like, what does it matter? Just let me write what I want to write. But you
Yes,
need
but
it.
literally, unless it's, I think, I know like The Quiet Place, their original screenplay was they just broke all the rules, and it was overlooked for many years. I think because they broke the rules of screenplay writing, and then it got into the right hands where they didn't care how it was written. But for someone like me, I'm gonna have to follow all the rules to move forward. And so, yeah, it's like have that really polished piece. Um, but for now, I'm just writing. I just love as ideas come to me. I'm just going to keep writing, and that way, when I take the next step, I'll be like, and I've got like 7 screenplays.
Right.
Yeah.
I also like your method and your explanation of how you're kind of just transcribing what you're watching in your head. Like the movie's just playing out for you. You're not you are, but you're not creating it as you go.
Hmm.
I like that method a lot because I've taken some courses and you go back and forth with like, well, do you outline the whole thing and it's basically written ahead of time, or how do you do it? And I always found personally I like the let the characters tell me where they want it to go.
Yes. And I'll be honest though, I just wrote a spec script for actually James at Subtle Film, and it's a thriller, and it was a very formulaic script. It had to be written a certain way, very much one act, second act, third act. It had to begin a certain way. I knew where the locations were. I knew the basic plot idea, but yeah, and that was probably the easiest one to write. I think when it's your own idea, and I do since because I do kind of do it more visual, it's in my head and write it out as it comes. I was like, oh, there's something to be said about planning everything and kind of knowing how it has to go. So, yeah, it is what it is. We're creatives. I think
Yeah, there's no wrong way.
yes.
If you want to submit, I guess there is a right way, but I don't think there's a wrong way.
Exactly.
So you kind of probably find that doing the writer director combo, while it's a ton of work, it might be a little bit more freeing in some ways because the script you're mostly writing it for your own benefit. Of course, the actors and the other people on set need to know what's going on, but
Yes, and I only directed one of my short films. I've always wanted someone else to come on board. I don't think I have a director's personality.
no.
Yeah, and I the last short film I did. It's called Here There Be Tigers, and it's a Stephen King Dollar Baby, so it's based on his short story. And I brought Polly Chattel on board as a director, and it was so cool because that was probably the first time where she was like, look in the camera, and what do you think of this, and what do you think of this performance by this actor. And I really enjoyed it, but I also it really cemented like I'm not a director. I like letting not letting experiencing other people create um my the world of what I'm writing. So
Okay, I could see that. You kind of get an objective, fresh look, so you can see it through someone else's eyes.
yes, yes.
That's
And
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's the norm too. A lot of people they buy your script outright, and then you're just like you're nothing at that point. They can do whatever they want to do with it. And James was nice enough to I was on set. I didn't have much to say, but to be on set and experience that. And when we were editing, and then when we edited the movie, I had to say I could be like, that. So it was a learning and very cool experience for sure.
Yeah, I feel like for something like the Nest, it might not be necessary to have the writer there, but because you wrote it personally from personal experiences and feelings, it almost seems like it would like the director would be putting themselves at a disadvantage if they're like, well, I don't really care what you have to say beyond the script.
Yeah, yeah. And the crew that did the Nest. I mean, we all know each other. That a lot of the actors knew each other, and it really was the family experience. That was the coolest part of it. And then bringing in someone like Dee Wallace, and we're all fangirling out, like trying to be cool, and don't scare Dee Wallace by how excited we all are that she's here.
Yeah, that is a really good get for a horror movie. Big name.
Mm,
For the Nest, you said you wrote it a few years ago, so it was probably shot over the last couple of years.
yes, yeah. They finished production pretty much a month or two before COVID hit. So then that, I mean, it sucked, but it also made editing a lot easier because the editor there was nothing going on. Everything
Hmm.
was shut down. So yeah, so then it was just like editing the film down and everything. But we got lucky that we finished before COVID.
Yeah, it's exactly where my next question was going.
Mhm.
Did you were you able to submit it to festivals? I know you just did a recent screening with a live audience, which is awesome because I always ask people because of the COVID thing if you had a chance to see it with an audience.
So James and Subtle Film, they decided not to do the film festival route, but we did premiere it at Grimfest, which is a UK horror film festival in Manchester, and they've screened a lot of my short films there, and I loved them. That festival is amazing, and so they screened The Nest, I guess 3 months ago in the UK through that film festival, and it was UK only. And then, but yeah, other than that, they decided not to do the film festival route with the feature. I think because they knew um, it was just going to go the buyers, the sales. Listen, I'm like, it's a language I'm still learning, but the buyers were like, it's going straight to VOD. So the live screening in the theater I went to, that was here in Asheville, and it was cast and crew and friends and family. And so, yeah, it's kind of sad that that is probably the only theater experience for the film. That it was amazing to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's cool you got to do it. That's a
Mhm.
big thing. I'd have to imagine you make a movie, you want that. You want to sit in the theater with the screen that takes up everything. It's cool to watch it at home, but it's not the
Yeah,
same experience.
yeah. And there are certain films, especially this past year and a half that were released. We're like, man, this would be 100% better. Like, it's great, but it'd be 100% better in a theater. And because there's something about experiencing, especially funny ones, with other people and hearing people's reactions and that kind of crowd experience. So yeah, but I feel like this is a quiet one. It works okay. Headphones in your room, laptop. I think it's a good one for that.
Yeah, because horror, you get more of the atmosphere where people getting up and down, going to the bathroom, checking their phones and stuff might take you out of it. Where,
Yeah.
like you said, a comedy, you're feeding off that crowd energy.
Yes. I've been watching so many horror films that I watched Caveat. Do you watch a lot of horror films?
I try to watch a lot of everything. You
Okay, no,
get,
good
dip
for
my toe
you.
to
Good for
everything.
you.
Yeah.
I tend to I love horror, obviously, but I also just because that's what I'm writing, I try to watch what everyone's making. And I had my headphones on and watching this film, and it was terrifying. It was just so creepy. And sometimes these films, like the sound design, when it's just straight in your ears and you're just living it, and you're like every now and then you're looking like around the room to make sure there's not something standing right beside you. But yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean because that's one thing. Like, home entertainment has gotten so good. I mean, you can get a 60-inch 4K great quality TV for relatively cheap, but I think something a lot of people miss on is the proper sound setup, and
Mhm.
theater is just designed and shaped for it, where you might miss out, especially in a horror movie,
Yes. Yes.
because you get that feeling that something is standing over your shoulder just by what your speakers are doing. It's great.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to take up your whole day, but that was a really awesome conversation. I mean, I think it's cool how much you've done and experience, and now you can put that into writing movies.
Thank you. And thank you for having me, Adam. I really enjoyed talking with you and
Absolutely.
yeah.
I do have to ask one question going all the way back to the beginning. It has nothing to do with the nest. That's why I didn't want to interrupt with it. When you got to be an extra on the Hunger Games, did you get to play someone from the Capitol or were you someone from the districts?
I did both.
Oh, awesome. So you got to do the
Oh
insane,
my god.
elaborate costuming?
Oh, it was amazing. And the funny thing is that I mean, it's such a lesson. It's such a lesson. For the district scenes, I got picked by Gary Ross to have this really close up scene of me. And it got cut. It was kind of in the opening of the film when they're showing the woman carry the bucket and the guy eating the chicken legs. And they're both friends of mine, which is really funny. So I got like singled out to be in a one person shot for that part that got cut. And then I got singled out to be so you know how Effie was the capital representative for their district. I was the capital representative for District 7. And they had a set, they shot everything with me pulling out the names of the two District 7 candidates. I can't think of the name. And that all got cut.
Oh,
It
that's too bad.
was the coolest experience ever. My makeup as a capital person, like it was insane. They bleached my eyebrows and I came home and I was like, I can rock this look. And then like I was like, I cannot rock this look. I look like an idiot. But it was just really fun.
Yeah,
Truly.
that's got to be such a cool experience to get. It's unfortunate the scene got cut, but to do something that elaborate and huge, because the scene that makes it in with Elizabeth Banks's character, you can just imagine what the other ones would be being that overdone.
Yes. Oh man. And I know Gary, I remember I was like, could there be a director's cut of this? And I remember he was always like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not showing anything else with
That's too
that one.
bad.
So it's gone.
Yeah, that's cool. You got to do it though. You have the
Yeah.
experience.
Very true.
Yeah. Before we do go, do you want to plug like a website or any of your socials or anything for the nest?
Yes. For me, I would really love if people would check out my short horror films. And Stephen King gave permission for the because normally Stephen King daughter babies are not public, so you can't have them on Vimeo or YouTube. And I have permission for the month of August to have Here There Be Tigers publicly screening on YouTube and Vimeo. So that would be something I would love for people to watch because those are passion projects. That's just love of Stephen King and his worlds. So it's under my name, Jennifer Trudrung. Jennifer Trudrung short films on YouTube and just Jennifer Trudrung under Vimeo. And then the Nest, I would love reviews anywhere, IMDb, Amazon, Redbox. Um, just I love to read. Sometimes I don't love to read reviews, but I it's still it's fun and it's how you learn and I love hearing how other people experience the film. So yeah, the Nest on IMDb. It's Letterbox, Rotten Tomatoes, any reviews, any feedback. That would be awesome to read. So,
Very cool. Well, thank you again for coming on. That was a lot of fun. Congratulations on the movie, and we're looking forward to the next one.
thank you, Adam. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.
I'd like to thank Jennifer one more time for coming on the show to talk to me about her career so far and how it was to write The Nest. The Nest is available now on VOD. Make sure you check it out. Also, make sure you check out So Is Her Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I kind of did this out of order, but I forgot to say, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Lots more new stuff coming your way. I have another Iron Studios box sitting right there, so I'm getting backed up on unboxing videos now, so I have to get on those because my shelves have space on them and I have to fill it up. You're not going to want to miss out. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. So Wizard Podcast can also be found on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you get multiple monthly bonus shows. We love hearing feedback, so drop us a note in the comment, leave us something on social media. All of our accounts can be found after the show and in the show notes. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, merchandise, and more. And on a more personal note, a good friend and I have an ongoing comedy comic series out. It's called Social Studies. Chapter 1 just wrapped up. Now's a good time to jump on board and catch up with the story. We're working on a crowdfunding campaign coming next month, so be on the lookout for that. A lot of cool stuff coming your way, and another opportunity to catch up before we get going with Chapter 2, which is already more than halfway complete. Tons of cool stuff coming your way. Check that out at socialstudiescomic.com. Thanks.